once again to the channel. And for those of you who follow this channel religiously, you would notice that I have three contents. So one, it's about sports in Ghana because I'm from Ghana. The second one is about sports and emerging issues around the world. And the third one is about state sports policies and structures. And today we're going all the way to southern part of Africa. It is not South Africa, it's not Botswana, it's not Zambia, it is Lesotho. And we'll be discussing policies, funding, gender, and structures so far as sports is concerned in Lesotho. Be our guest as we discuss today's subject. Okay, so thank you so much for making some time. And as you all saw, this is our very beautiful guest. She would introduce herself and before the main discussion begins. So over to you.
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Motsejoa Belina Ntsane, and I am from Lesotho. I'm currently working as a sports and recreation officer for the Ministry of Gender, Youth, Sports and Recreation. And I am also a DTM Dream Together Masters Program alumni, proudly.
Okay, so can you also share briefly about your journey to becoming assistant, if I get it right, sports officer at the Ministry of Gender and Youth? Gender, Youth, Sports and Recreation, I guess.
Yes.
In Lesotho.
Well, I have a degree from the International School of Sports and Physical Education in Cuba. So that's where my journey started. After graduating from my first degree, I joined the ministry to be a sports and recreation officer. I think I've been with the ministry for over 10 years, or is it 12? I'm not sure, but I've been there for quite a while. Yes.
Did you do any other profession before sports, or you had always want to become a sports?
Well, no, it wasn't a profession really. I've always been interested in law. So I did play sports in high school, but primarily I wanted to be a lawyer. So sports sort of, it was a surprise when I decided to go into the sports industry. So I did my LLB, but I did not finish my LLB. I was done by third year. That's when I applied for a sports scholarship with the Cuban institution. So that was very different. My parents were not expecting it. I didn't expect it. My brother, who was my mentor because he's a lawyer, was not expecting me to, shift from law to sports. But, if you're a believer, we say God works in mysterious ways. And I've enjoyed the sports industry journey, and it has opened so much doors for me. And I think it'll continue opening doors for me.
Well, thank you so much. And that's the African spirit right there. God works in mysterious ways. You may never know what it is. Anyway, so the nature of our discussion today for our viewers or for students around the world we'll be discussing then state sports institutions, agencies, and governance, which is one. And then the second one would be on the roles of the national sports associations. And then the third one, we will try and see how the sustainable development goals, are highlighted in our sport policies, especially when almost all the African countries have assigned to the sustainable development goals, which in itself indicated or stated categorically that sports is an important enabler for sustainable development. So first of all, let's start with the state sports institutions, agencies, and governance. And my first question is, which everybody will ask is there a designated sports ministry or otherwise in Lesotho?
There is a designated sports ministry in Lesotho, which is called the Ministry of Gender, Youth, Sports and Recreation. So there are three departments in that ministry. There's the gender department, and then the youth department, and then there's the sports and recreation department, which I work for.
Yeah, so I guess those departments, do they qualify as agencies in itself?
Government agencies, yes, they are government agencies.
Okay. So next question is the state sports structures. That's from national, province, and then the district sports structures. Can you run us through what it is like in Lesotho?
Well, there's the Ministry of Sports and Recreation, which basically runs everything sports related.
Yeah.
Then we have our other mother bodies, which are the Lesotho Sports and Recreation Commission. And then we have the Lesotho National Olympic Committee, the NNOC. Then with the ministry has different workers posted in different districts, meaning the offices they get to deliver all sports services throughout the country, throughout the 10 districts. So that's how it works. So it's the ministry on top, and then you have the two mother bodies, that is the Lesotho Sports and Recreation Commission and the Lesotho National Olympic Committee.
Yeah, so with the Lesotho National Olympic Committee, we will come to that briefly in the subsequent topics. But with the Lesotho Commission, first of all, can you run us through what is the geographical divisions like in Lesotho? Do you have the national regions or province and districts? How is it like?
Can you clarify what national provinces are in this context?
So let's say you have Lesotho as a country, and
Yes.
then the country is divided into provinces, I guess.
10 districts, yes, sir.
10 districts, okay. Because I know some people do have province, and then within the province they have districts, but I think it's different in Lesotho. Okay, so basically to understand what you just said was you have the Lesotho National Commission, a sports commission, right, under the ministry, and then under the commission you have the 10 districts, right?
Well, no, it's the ministry.
Please explain. Yeah.
So the ministry has its headquarters in the capital, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So now they have what happens is they had to have other offices in the districts to be able to deliver services to other districts, sports services to other districts.
Yeah.
So the ministry is the ministry with its 10 other employees in the districts. I mean, 9 other employees in the districts, yes.
Okay. And what's the role of the Lesotho Sports Commission you mentioned?
Oh, yes. The role of the Lesotho Sports Commission, basically, we have the national associations with the Lesotho Sports and Recreation Commission. So the Lesotho Sports and Recreation Commission, the main objective is to lead implementation of the strategic actions related to the community of sports and recreation. It also has to collaborate with the Lesotho National Olympic Committee to deliver strategic actions pertaining to good governance, talent development, and the use of sports for development.
Yeah.
And also to support the Lesotho National Olympic Committee to deliver strategic actions related to the podium performance, the Triple P. I don't know if you've heard of that. And to structure the organization of the Lesotho Sports and Recreation in alignment with policy goals, which enables outcomes that are regulatory, advocacy, and communication. So that is what the Lesotho Sports and Recreation does. And also they also manage the national federations of the country.
Okay, so just to be very clear, the Lesotho Sports and Recreation Commission do not have jurisdiction over the districts. They do not have jurisdiction over the districts, the 10 districts.
No, not really. They don't have total jurisdiction. They have some sort of jurisdiction to the districts because they work with the national federations. And us as ministry employees, we have to work with the national federations uh, to sort of monitor and evaluate their programs that they bring into their sports programs that they bring into the districts.
Yeah.
So they sort of have, it's not a whole district, just a little bit,
Just a little bit, yeah. Okay,
yeah,
because
but
I will.
they answer solely to the ministry because they are funded as well by the ministry.
Yeah, I asked that, but because in some countries and some previous interviews, just like Ghana as well, you have that's the commission, which in Ghana is called the authority now, the sports authority. They do that kind of work with the regions and then the districts. So that's why I asked that question. But he said it's a little different with Lesotho, which is interesting to know. Yeah. So my next question is are the subnational structures like the districts, are they autonomous, or they would have to um, or regulated or work within the objectives and directives of the sports ministry?
You mean the other 9 districts, 10 districts?
Yes.
Well, okay. The 10 districts are obviously sub offices of the ministry, right?
Yeah.
So we are not autonomous. We still answer to
Yeah.
the Ministry of Sports and Recreation. When I'm working here, because I'm in a different district, I still answer to the Director of Sports. I still answer to the manager, and I still answer to the Minister of Sports and Recreation. So no, we're not we're not autonomous. I still have to deliver
and how about
services.
the commission as well, the Sports and Recreation Commission? Are they also autonomous, or they also work within the directives of the ministry?
They're not. They're semi-autonomous because if that's the correct word,
Yeah.
they, like I mentioned earlier, they are funded by the ministry. So most of the funds are from the ministry. So they use the funds from the ministry to fund the national federations. So not exactly. I don't think they're autonomous. They're semi-autonomous. So there are things that they can still do on their own, but most of the times they have to run it by the ministry and by the Minister of Sports and Recreation.
Yep. So that was the structures and how they are placed and functioning. And the next question is, do Lesotho has a sports policy? And if they do, what is the focus of the sports policy?
Oh, wow. Yes, Lesotho currently has a sports policy. Like we are currently updating our sports policy, which was from 2020 to 2030. And we have been collaborating with the Commonwealth Secretariat. They've been helping us update our sports policy. But our sports policy is still at zero draft. It hasn't been validated yet by the authorities. So yes, we have an outdated sports policy, and then we have an updated sports policy that is still at zero draft level. Hopefully, it'll be validated and launched before the end of the year.
But can you share with us whether the focus of the policy, would you want to share the previous one or the drafted ones? I mean, it's up to you. You can share with us to at least have an idea of the direction of sports in Lesotho, especially is the focus on elite sports, amateur sports, or as you collaborate with the Commonwealth body for sports, is the focus on the social value of sports?
I can share the current policy that is currently at draft level, because I was fortunate enough to be part of the task team. Yes, our the current sports policy is focusing on obviously elite sports. Lesotho Lesotho being recognized as a sports country at elite level. And this is new. Our previous policy were not aligned with the SDGs, were we aligned with the Kazan Action Plan and the African Agenda 2063. But with this current policy, all of our policy goals have been aligned with the SDGs, the Kazan Action Plan, and the Africa Agenda 2063. So it answers, we're basically trying to be at that international level. We hope that our policy will answer to those priorities. Those policy goal priorities will be able to answer. Will be answered by the policy.
Yeah. So, in your own estimation, do you think the drafted one, as you mentioned, or you just spoke about the current one, right?
Yes, the current one.
Yeah, the current one, did it focus more on elite or how do we call it, mass sports participation or the social value of sports?
Mm-hmm. Well, it did sort of focus on sports for all and sports for development.
Yeah.
Like I've said, we are focusing on podium performance program, right? The Triple P, I'm sure you've heard of that. And they want to develop guidelines on selection criteria for teams, underpinning talent development programs, and also to produce and implement a coordinated national talent development strategy supported by annual plans and financial resources. So yes, we do have elite sports or sports for all or sports for development as a priority in our policy through the Triple P program.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, the what's the name? The African Union 2063 agenda, and then the SDGs are
and the Kazan Action Plan.
Kazan Action Plan, of course, very famous one. Areas we can discuss in the future, but I've had the opportunity to read through all these documents. Having said that, I think you have outlined the objective of your policy. And the next question I would ask is, I know you spoke about sports for all and all that, but how are girls or women and persons with disability considered in this policy, given that people refer to these groups as minority? I don't, but that has been the norm.
Okay. Well, our policy is all about is to ensure that no one is left behind, obviously. So what we have done, one of our policy priority as well, is when answering to girls, women, and people living with disabilities, is to develop a national social development through sports strategy in collaboration with the Department of Gender and the Ministry of Social Development to encourage participation and the use of sports and recreation to contribute to equality, inclusion, and the empowerment of women and girls and of persons living with disabilities, the elderly, and people living in rural communities. So yes, they're a great priority in our policy as well, because we don't want to leave anyone behind.
Well, in your own estimation, I mean, we know policies are not implementations. And so in your own estimations, can you tell me over the past years, how practical or pragmatic has this policies been on the grounds?
Well. That's a very difficult question, Derek, but I'll try and answer it. Not so pragmatic, to be honest, and also given the socioeconomic situations of some of our African countries, some of these policies are not really pragmatic. But I think this time around, with the second policy, we have the Commonwealth, in collaboration with the ministry, has done an extensive work, because we've done extensive research and we've actually gone out to the 10 districts and talked to people at grassroots about some of the changes they want to see happen, with sports and recreation in this country. It be governance, disability sports, girls and women in sports, women empowerment, elite sports. So I'm hopeful that this time around, this policy would actually speak to the Basotho nation, and we would be able to deliver, and that it is pragmatic.
Okay, thank you for the honest answer. And well, I wouldn't want to talk much more about policy process because you see what you are doing now is just you still have a draft ongoing, but it's my hope that all implementing actors, especially frontline actors, will be involved in the policy making process. Because once that is done, people have a fair idea and understanding of the policy and also contribute or hold authorities into account when policies or maybe laws are not being implemented as it's supposed to be. So the next question is there a particular national sport favored by Lesotho?
Yes, it's always the case. In every country has like an identity sports.
Yeah, it's supposed to be sports
In
for
the
all
US,
anyway.
they have baseball. And most European countries have soccer. So yes, we do. It's definitely soccer, football.
Only football?
That is. Well, yeah, you would be amazed. And I think it's football because there are football pitches everywhere you go. You have in all the villages I've been to have like a little football pitch. It might not be, up to standard, but it's a football pitch, and there's little boys and girls kicking football, and it's accessible to everyone. Everybody can watch football on television, so it is. And let me tell, it's a secret. Football is the most funded sports in this country by the ministry. They get all the funds, and it has all these other national federations in our bro. Like, why do they get to be favored? But yes, football is favorite sport and sort of like a or country identity sports.
Yeah,
but we
so
don't do
that's
very
it.
Well.
Football takes all the funding, so it turns the national policies into football policy instead of sports policy. And I've read about this in most policies, sports policy, especially in Africa. I've also found that in Ghana as well. And just like you rightly said, in the history of even FIFA, African countries have gotten to the semi-final twice, and yet still almost all the funding goes into sport and football.
Yeah.
We would reserve this for another topic too, because I always say it's football and the rest, or sports equates football. I will talk about this into details in another topic. So now let's look at the funding. I've just raised an eyebrow regarding the funding.
Yeah.
Where does the National Sports Fund comes from?
I'm hoping that this video does not get to my bosses, this interview. We don't have a sports fund. Lesotho does not have a sports fund.
Not even a lottery.
But we have not even a lottery, but we have something close to a sports fund. It is very close to, it's called the Lesotho Sports and Recreation Act 2022 and the Lesotho Sports and Recreation Regulation Act 2010. So the 2002 Action Sports and the action is key legislation setting out the legal and regulatory environment for sports in the country. The Act regulates the operation of the Lesotho Sports and Recreation Commission, the registration process for sports and recreation associations in Lesotho, and fundraising for athletes, clubs, and associations in Lesotho. Then the 2002 Act also calls for the ministry to establish a sports trust fund in consultation with the Ministry of Finance. For this purpose, the Act confers the power to establish the Sports Trust Fund on the Lesotho Sports and Recreation Commission. So we have that Act, but we're still waiting. So to answer your question, we don't have a sports fund.
Yeah, so it means that you have the act over there, but the act is not functioning. Is that the case?
The act is not functioning.
Yeah. So that goes against what we said, that there are so many beautiful legal instruments in place, but pragmatizing them to make them functional has become a problem. It is not new. And secondly, you spoke about the funding for football. It's an open secret. It's not a secret. So don't feel too bad about it in any case.
Okay.
So with all this, how do you fund it? Is it from national coffers, or how do the funding trickle down to the districts and to other groups or stakeholders?
Yes, government budget. The ministry budgets for activities, and we get funded by the government because we're a government agency.
Yeah.
So all sports sports is run basically by government money.
And how
once in a while we might get funding from the private sector, but it doesn't happen a lot.
And how does it work? The budget goes through Parliament, and then it has to be passed, or how does it work?
Yes, the budget has to go through Parliament. The director and the manager and the minister have to present a budget at Parliament, and Parliament has to approve, and then we get the funds.
Okay. I know you've answered this partially, but how are the funds distributed to the districts and other organizations like the sports associations?
I'm not very familiar with the accounting department of the funds, but there's a vote for all the sports activities. So anytime for instance, if I want to do an activity for my district, I'll obviously have to go to headquarters and fill out a procurement plan of how I want, what things that I need for my activities. So that's just basically it. And then they'll go into that vote, and then they'll check if there's money for me to, run my activities. Yes.
But of course you do prepare budget for
quarterly, all the time. You always have to hand in your budgets and your year plans and your work plans, so that the ministry is aware of that you're going to be using a certain amount of money for your activities.
One thing that is difficult in my line of work is getting public servants or civil servants to speak on issues of research in sports and policy. It's always been like a ping pong. I'm battered here and there, but I always manage to get some information. I'm saying this is not to put you into trouble, but the question is sports driven by politics, or politics is driven by sports in Lesotho?
It's intersection. They're intertwined.
I know you wouldn't want to go further.
You don't want to go further. The relationship there, sports is, what was that? If it's sports politics is run by politics, or do politics run sports?
Yeah. It works
together. They have an interesting relationship. Yeah.
One of the interesting what a politician says, sports, you cannot operate sports in isolation, and that's more like trying to be polite and beg the question. But thank you. At least you said they work together, which is not bad. And I understand your position, and I wouldn't also want to push you to a dead end.
I
which may
don't.
be problematic.
No, it's not. I really don't have a problem with
Yeah.
sports and politics having a relationship. Um, I've read so much before I did when I was looking for a research topic for my master's thesis. I wanted to go into the relationship between sports and politics, and I think they're really it's not bad because sports still has to answer to some of the things that happen in our countries. Sports can be used as a tool for activism. Do you understand? Sports can be used to answer the socioeconomic problems in one's country. We've had sports for peace, sports for this, but I think our politicians go about it the wrong way. They don't really know how to use sports as a tool. So that's why a lot of people have a problem with the sports and politics relationships because it's not been used properly. It is the politicians tend to have a way of being devious about the sports and politics relationship. But if it is used properly, there wouldn't be a problem.
Well, that's a good one, but I disagree with you that they don't know how to use it. I think they do, but just like you said, they'll find a way to use it in best way that suits their interest, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sometimes very difficult to say, but it is the truth. And when they spend um, 5 million, $2 million on football alone, could give you an indication of why they would do so. But thank you so much for sharing that of Lesotho, and that makes um, that's very good. Now let's look at this: the role of the national sports associations or federations and their relationship with government. So let's. I know you had spoken about the Lesotho Sports and Recreation Commission
Mm-hmm.
liaison with the national sports associations. So now, if you look at the National Sports Association, right, with whom do you think they hold allegiance to? Is it to the government of Lesotho, or they are more connected to the international sports federation, their respective international sports federations?
In our case, I think they're between a rock and a hard place. They'll obviously have to pledge allegiance to the international federations, but they don't get a lot of funding. They do get funding from the international federations, but then they have to. I think they lean more in towards the ministry because most of the money comes from the ministry.
So in cases where the ministries intervene or maybe interferes, what happens? Do they also report to the government? Has there been a
The
case in Lesotho?
federations,
Yes, when the
yeah, the
ministry
federations.
intervene or interfere in their management or decision-making process. Uh, has there been a case in Lesotho where they report to their international respect to their respective international sports federations?
I think they do. I think they have to report to the international federations, but they also have to report to the ministry because they have to account for the money that they use that is from government coffers. So yeah, but the ministry seems to have, through the Lesotho Sports and Recreation, seems to sort of have a hand in how some of the national federations are run.
So, if they do receive funding from government, at what point do governments decide to support or fund their programs?
If they don't get funding,
Well, I mean, if they do receive some sort of funding from government, at what point do government fund or support their programs? Are they supported periodically or always, or when they are going for international competitions or programs?
it has to be always. It really has to be always. but I know that some federations only approach the ministry or the government when they have international competitions to attend. So some are always knocking on our doors, but some federations are self-sufficient because most of them are supported by the international federations. For instance, I'm currently I'm working with the Cricket Association. We've been running the programs through the international federation, so they've never asked for funding from the ministry. All they just wanted was for us to support the programs and to monitor and evaluate the programs.
Yeah. But in terms of funding, can they legally claim funding from government or government through the sports structures?
I think if memory serves me well, we've had a legal battle with the Lesotho Sports and Recreation Commission because of funding from the ministry. But I'm not I don't have all the facts of the case because I think the case took place while I was on my way to Korea. So I don't have, but yes, we've had a legal battle with the ministry has had a legal battle with the Lesotho Sports and Recreation Commission because of funding, because we're not getting money from the ministry, and yeah, there was that.
Yeah,
but
my question is actually on the national sports associations, whether they can legally claim funding from government.
That I'm not aware of. I'm not sure of. I don't know if they can, because we are aware that they still get funding from the international federation. So I don't know if
Yeah, but maybe you can just give us a tip in the drafted policy. Do you have they made any considerations for sports associations to be legally funded by government?
I don't remember it being there, honestly. No, they haven't. It wasn't discussed. I know autonomy was discussed of the national federations,
Okay.
but funding and if they have a right to demand funds from the government, I don't, because it's
I get it. If autonomy was discussed, then that explains it. Yeah, I know government also treads cautiously when they are dealing with the national sports associations, so they are not striked out by their respective international sports federations. Now, let's look at. I know you talked about it earlier on the role of the Olympic Committee. How is it? It's always complex. You have the national sports associations, you have the National Olympic Committee. Do the National Olympic Committee have to go to the ministry through the Sports and Recreation Commission, or they deal with the ministry directly? Are they different from the national sports associations?
It's very complex, but I'll take you through it. Well, they have to lead the implementation of the strategic actions on again, elite sports, which is triple P, and the achievement of high performance in sports. They do that through the collaboration with the Lesotho Sports and Recreation Commission to deliver strategic actions pertaining to good governance, talent development, and the use of sports for development. And they also have to support the Lesotho Sports and Recreation Commission to deliver strategic actions related to community sports and recreation. And they have to support the ministry to implement strategic actions aimed at improving governance. So there's a whole lot, but you get what they have to do. So they work with the ministry and with the Lesotho Sports and Recreation.
Yeah. And that's different from the other sports associations, I guess.
Yeah.
The sports associations, as you mentioned earlier, have to pass through the commission, rather, before they go to the ministry. But the National Olympic Committee, if I get you right, can work in both ways. They can deal with government. They have dotted lines with both government and then the sports recreation. Yeah. Yes.
Definitely.
Thank you for this clarity. But it's always complex to find where the National Olympic Committee stands when there is a commission or authority. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, well, I think you have exhausted almost all the question, but the last question, which is becoming increasingly interesting, is the Sustainable Development Goals. You
Mhm.
mentioned about the Africa 2063 agenda and then the Sustainable Development Goals. I've spoken with some country sports, development commission reps about how this plays when you have the African 2063 and then you have the Sustainable Development Goals. As for Kazan, I don't even want to go to Kazan now because these two these two are non-dominating, but it appears people less talk about the um, African Agenda 2063. Rather, the SDGs kind of like overshadows all these, and they say the SDGs um, is similar to, it has some similarities with the um, Africa Agenda 2063. My
Mhm.
question is this: given that the SDGs have permeated most developing countries in Africa, in most countries' domestic policies, how has the Ministry of Gender and Youth and Sports in Lesotho considered these SDGs and sports policies? Has it been a policy goal at all?
Can you please repeat that?
Yeah, how has the SDGs been considered in your sports policy, especially the one you are drafting?
Mm. They have been considered because all of our policy goals have been aligned to the SDGs. So you have a policy goal, for instance, policy goal would be girls and women and people living with disability. Then we would have a specific SDG, and then we would have the strategy and then the outcomes. So we are heavily into the SDGs. All our policy goals are aligned with the SDGs and Agenda 2063.
Yeah. So monitoring and evaluation in that order follows that order, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So on that note, I want to thank you so much and for making time for this discussion. It's been a very fruitful one, but I don't know if you have any more additions to what we've said so far.
Do I? No. Well, I think my observation so far with sports policies is um, they're intentional, persistent to structure, like fixing structures. And I
Yeah.
think it's not. I think we need to be intentional with other things. We need to answer the needs of our African people when it comes to sports and how it will answer our socioeconomic situations. We should not be focused on who's going to answer to who, because power corrupts. And I think that's where we get it wrong. That's where we never get to implement our policies, because a whole section of, well, majority of policy would obviously focus on structure and governance and who answers to who and who gets the power, and that's my worry. That's my grievances with most African sports policies.
Yeah, and I think you said it right. I agree with the needs assessment. It's important for us to have one, not only needs assessment, but the country itself needs to have a philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
right? What is our focus? And that should be the main objective, not necessarily the SDGs. The SDGs are
Yeah,
global goals. The Agenda
definitely.
2063 are continental goals, but specifically to the people of Lesotho, what is your philosophy? Is it
Mm-hmm.
what is your focus? You
Yeah.
realize that Korea focuses on winning at all cost. And so there is more on elitism, yeah, sport policy. If you come to Norway, is more of the welfare. So there is more of the mass participation, focus on older people and younger people, what at all are we doing? You get it? So once you have this, and then you make your policies in line with this needs assessment and the philosophy of the country, then I think that will be addressed. But I mean, just like you said, it's not only about the structures, but it's about the politics of the policy.
Yeah,
You get it?
definitely.
Yeah.
The
So
politics
then, of the policy. So then
mm,
you realize that there is more focus on one in terms of the implementation of the policy itself, on one sports, whilst others are neglected or non-involved or not involved at all. And that's where you have a lot of laws and acts and legal instruments sitting in the cabins without being implemented.
that is true.
And that's the unfortunate thing about most. I don't know about most African countries, but that the ones that I read, I know much about the Ghana one, and the ones that I read and heard in most African countries, I think, um, falls within this domain. So it's important for us to put the philosophy behind it and then meet the needs of the local people. Yeah, not the
Definitely.
needs of the international market,
Mm-hmm.
or the needs of the politics. In any case, thank you so much for
I
the
like that.
conversation.
I like what you said. This discussion could probably go. I like what you said earlier about the SDGs and the Kazan Action Plan and okay, I'm for Africa Agenda 2063 because it's continental and
Yeah,
I'm African and our problems are almost the same across
yeah,
board. They're bringing in the SDGs and the Kazan Action Plan, and some of these things don't really answer to African problems. You know,
yeah,
it's just international problems, and they sort of like have a band-aid to deal this. We put on this band-aid to deal with this
yeah,
a global band-aid to deal with all
yeah,
these problems, but there needs to be African band-aid.
yeah,
You know, it has to be specific to Africa. It has to be
yeah,
specific to Rwanda. It has to be specific to Lesotho. So it really, I think that's why most of our policies are not implemented,
yeah,
or we have a problem with implementing, because we have a global answer to our problems, an
yeah,
international answer to our problems. We have to have an African specific solution to African problems.
yeah.
So I'm
Well,
for the
yeah.
agenda, African 2063 more than I am with the SDGs.
In any case, I don't want us to exhaust all the time, and for the viewers, hopefully, I hope you have a good time, and those sports enthusiasts or students, I hope this is very resourceful, and please feel free to provide comments if you want. But on that note, I would ask, I don't know if you want to say something once again, and then we wrap up.
No, thank you, Derek. Thank you very much for considering me, and to have this discussion. I had a lot of fun. I think I really don't have a lot. So I've said a lot. I've said a lot. But yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It was
Okay, and thank you, and hopefully we will get the time to meet again.
all right.